Chapter 11. A Brave New Dawn. At 10 a.m. on January 7th, 2000, I walked away from Turning Point and stepped into a new millennium. Fear was hot on my trail, but I kept walking because I knew where I was going had to be better than where I had been. At 11:30, I was sitting alone in a church in a circle of 12 empty folding chairs, waiting for a meeting to start. Gradually, men and women from different walks of life began to fill the seats around me. I watched as they shook hands and hugged each other, wondering what their backgrounds were. Had they gone through anything like I had been through? There was no way of telling. And what were they thinking of me? Was my past an open book for all to see? My concerns were put to rest when several of them, realizing I was a newcomer, walked over and introduced themselves. The meeting was run by a guy named George. He was a small black man with deep lines in his face that revealed the obvious anguish he had endured during years of addiction. He welcomed us to the meeting and shared that AA was a spiritually based program for alcoholics. He said the most important person in the room was the newcomer, because he or she was an indication of what life would be like if one of them were to pick up a drink again, and a reminder of how great a struggle it was when they first came off the street. People took turns sharing their experiences. When mine came, I said, "My name is Charles. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I was just released from a drug rehab, and my sponsor wants me to get phone numbers from other members present." The biggest thing I got out of this meeting was the common thread that ran through everyone's story, which was not about drinking, but the thinking. They had made a commitment to deal with life head on, not seeking to escape its pressures through drinking and using drugs. They had gone through years without using and were actually happy, although they had faced serious challenges that thoroughly tested their fortitude. One man was homeless for years, and during that time refused to pick up a bottle. He knew if he started drinking again, his life would immediately get worse. Throughout this trying period, he kept coming to the meetings, convinced that shouldering with others in a godly environment was the only thing that would keep him moving in a positive direction. We closed the meeting, and like a child in a whirlwind of excitement, I rushed to the hospital to visit Mom. After practically running down the corridor toward her room, she caught me in a gaze, and I smiled as I passed through the door. Suddenly by her side, I looked into her eyes, which were suddenly glistening through a flood of tears, and said, "Everything's going to be all right, Ma. I'm going to be okay." For the first time in my life, I felt comfortable with myself, and I wanted her to take a good look at me. The last time she saw me, I was shrouded in darkness, but now the cloud cover had given way to a burst of sunshine that I could clearly see warming the innermost reaches of her dear soul. That night I went to a second AA meeting and intently listened as more members shared the messages of strength and hope. The next day, I attended Pastor Osborne's church, which is primarily made up of recovering alcoholics and addicts. His message was about Lazarus, the friend whom Jesus raised from the dead. He told us that Jesus called Lazarus' name and he rose, and now he was calling us to life as well. At the end of the service, Pastor Osborne asked for everyone who needed a Bible to come forward. I went up, and he suggested that I carry it with me always and read it every opportunity. Following his advice, I began to notice that people were responding to me differently. I received warm smiles on the street and occasional "Praise the Lord." People even started conversations with me. I freely told them what I had gone through and how I was now seeking God's will for my life. Where my entire day once revolved around the pursuit of drugs, the focus was now on chasing after God. In the morning, I would watch TV evangelists like Joyce Meyer and Creflo Dollar, then read from my Bible, as well as several devotionals and AA books. This was followed by an AA or NA, Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Afterwards, I spent 3 to 4 hours with Mom, either in her apartment, hospital room, or convalescent home, as her condition worsened. We had dinner together, and then I was off to another meeting. I literally spent hours on the bus each day between meetings and hospital visits, which I didn't mind because I passed the time reading, meditating, and thinking about this new life I was stepping into. I finally saw hope for myself. My attitude and behavior were changing before my eyes, and I felt good about it. Needless to say, so did Mom. The anger and resentment I harbored against my father and brothers began to fade away, and we shared many moments laughing because we both finally had so much to be thankful for. Yes, she was ill, but seeing her oldest son, who came into this world with so many obstacles against him, now standing in victory, gave her the reason to rejoice, and rejoice we did. My moment in the sun, however, was short-lived because it wasn't long before the tables turned, and I found myself lying in the dark, clinging to my pillow, trembling. Here's where the shining hero had again begun to wage a losing effort in a war on an old familiar front. The fear of insanity had once again reared its ugly head, and I could hear its footsteps and feel the chill of the straitjacket reaching out to bind me. One morning, while cleaning my apartment, Creflo Dollar said something that caused me to stop and sit on the edge of the bed. I listened intently as he told the story of a demon-possessed man who was shackled and chained every night inside a graveyard by the people of a particular town. He would constantly break free, rip his clothes off, and run the hillside screaming and cutting himself with stones. One evening, Jesus crossed over to the region by boat. When he stepped out, the man ran up to him, and demons pleaded for Jesus not to harm them. He made the demons leave the man, and when the people saw him, they were amazed that he was dressed clean and in his right mind. As Jesus was getting into the boat to start his return trip, the man asked if he could go with him, but Jesus insisted that he go back and tell the people what happened. Immediately, I identified with this man. My father's wish that I had never been born was like being chained in a tomb and counted for dead. As I grew older, I began to break free and run along the jagged edges of life, where I mutilated myself with stones he threw and left scattered at my feet. And through the dark years, I screamed out in pain, injuring anyone who got too close, until the day I came to the end of my rope and called out to God. My identification with that man in the tombs culminated when I heard the part where he was dressed clean and in his right mind. I broke down and cried, sensing the hand of Jesus restoring me to wholeness. After 20 minutes, I stood up, and I knew I was clean as well. The darkness that had imprisoned me was suddenly gone, and I was free. At that moment, I discovered the wonderful plan my counselor at Turning Point said God had for my life. It was to tell my story just as the man in the tombs had been commissioned to do by Jesus. I believe with all my heart that God had given the same charge to me. Today, this message is the driving force of my life. I reach out daily to suffering brothers and sisters, telling them they don't have to live in bondage, and making sure they know that what Jesus did for me, He'll surely do for them. I've watched children get back with their mothers and fathers they had lost. Parents get back offspring mercilessly torn from their arms, and many who had been imprisoned and robbed of their self-respect return to society with new direction and a commitment to make a positive impact on their community. But of all the awesome things I've seen, none continues to amaze me more than the transformation of Charles Valentine. A dramatic change also witnessed by a praying mother who held on to life just to see it happen. Mom passed away on April 1st, 2002. It really hurt to see her go. But although her passing was a bitter loss, the pain was diminished by the memory of the blessing she received the day I walked into her hospital room. Her eyes danced amid rivers of joy, washing over and healing her wounded heart as she gazed at the fulfillment of a long, cherished prayer. I was her firstborn, innocently scarred and caused to stray. But there I was, as if born anew in the loving embrace where I had my beginnings. And her spirit sang, because her son, who was once lost, had now been found. This concludes The Man in the Tombs, the story of the life of Charles Valentine. If you or someone you know is struggling with an addiction, we want you to know that you're not alone. If you would like to find out more about Charles and his ministry, P.A.T.H, Peace Over Addiction Through Healing, visit themaninthetombs.com.
Hi, this is Charles Valentine. I'd like to share a few moments with you and tell you where I'm at this point in my life. I'm approaching my 8th year in recovery and married to a wonderful woman named Lisa Joy. I have never felt so happy, so complete, and so successful in all my life. This is a direct result of turning my life over to the care of God through the teachings of Jesus Christ. Early in the recovery process, I knew that I needed a better understanding of how God worked in my life, and that teaching had to come through a pastor. At one of my Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step meetings, I asked someone if they knew of a good local church. I was led to the Life Christian Church in West Orange, New Jersey, and through the loving presence of that local body, I kept healing. In time, there was a stronger conviction that God wanted to use me to help bring others out of their addiction. I asked Pastor Smith if the church had a recovery program, and he informed me that he did not, but he had been praying for someone to come and start one. He said he believed I was that person. This led to the formation of P.A.T.H, Peace Over Addiction Through Healing. In the beginning, it was a Monday night 12-step Christian meeting. In less than 3 years, it developed into a complete substance abuse program through which we now provide and facilitate interventions, detox, inpatient, outpatient drug and alcohol rehabs, one-on-one counseling, sponsorship, 12-step meetings, anger management, and retreats. We also help people find shelter, food, clothing, health care, peace, and more. Another part of P.A.T.H involves talking to the alcoholic and drug addict who lives on the street. The first thing we let them know is they do not have to live that way. We tell them we have information, a solution, and we're willing to work with them side by side. Part of our working together involves going to AA meetings and shouldering with brothers and sisters in a way that has blessed me tremendously, as I have watched many of them go from P.A.T.H to become regular attendees at church, their broken lives gradually becoming mended and restored. I share the joy of every person who walks down the road to victory, as God brings them out of that dark, ugly place to a meaningful, purpose-filled life. I am there. Together, we celebrate the freedom. Together, we celebrate the wholeness. We share the laughter. We share the tears. We share the love of Christ. And I am so overwhelmed by that love that I stare in my sleep at night, knowing that with each morning will come another opportunity to bring others into this beautiful life. A life so unlike the one I left behind, because now, instead of hiding behind the pillows, I climb from my bed with great expectations. In addition, I want to give you 3 telephone numbers. The first telephone number is AA 800-687-8566, NA 866-802-6262, and my telephone number, 973-731-7744, extension 108. Today is such a great day, and I want to thank you for spending this time with me. Charles.